How's it going, everybody? My name is Mike Dokter. I am the high school women's basketball coach of one of the sport house teams, the House, out of Muskegon, Michigan. And we are reading Pound the Stone this year as our book for the year. So last year we read Chop Wood, Carry Water. If you're just stumbling upon this video for the first time, I would recommend that you hit up the other House playlist, the Chop Wood, Carry Water playlist. Listen to that book all the way through, and we can get you guys into this one too. So this is the second book in the series, Pound the Stone by Joshua Medcalf. We're going to be reading chapters 9 and 10 and maybe 11, depending on the time today, with some thoughts. So chapter 9, Paper Ceilings. The next day, the sales didn't come easily. By the time Jason's stomach growled for dinner, he had only sold 2 books. He walked home frustrated, but he knew what would help clear his head: basketball. He had passed some courts in the park a few blocks back from Russ and Jan's house. So after dinner and helping with the dishes, that's exactly where he went. He planned on hitting his sales goal and making the team again. And when he did, he needed to be ready. Even though he always hated it, he needed to practice. Games were his time to shine, and he knew that he always played much better in front of a crowd. He fed off that energy and attention. Practice, on the other hand, felt more like torture. So when he saw a pickup game starting, he asked if he could join. The guy in charge, Smokey, looked Jason over. "You sure you can play with one hand like that?" One of the other guys laughed. "Smokey, come on, man. Kid has a cast on. Won't be fair." Jason's competitive side kicked in, and he glared back. "Won't be fair for me or for you?" That was it. They couldn't let Jason show them up like that. Jason was in, and the game was on. Street ball was how Jason learned basketball in grade school. But after years of playing in school leagues, he forgot how rough and fast it was. Elbows, traveling, cheap shots, anything goes on the street, and Jason wasn't ready for it. He had gotten soft. He lost the ball twice in the first 5 possessions, and it quickly became clear that in spite of his natural athleticism, he was simply getting outplayed. Without both hands, his dribbling and his passing were off. The only thing that saved him was his solid footwork. But even that could only go so far. By the time the game ended, he had scored just a single layup. He left the court in a burst of hot anger and shame, walking away and trying to ignore the digs the other guys got in at him. His frustration must have been pretty obvious, because as he got home, Russ looked up from his book he was reading on the porch and asked, "What's wrong?" Jason just shook his head. "Nothing." "You look like you were ready to put a cast on that other hand. That's not nothing." Jason hesitated and sat down. "Playing with one hand is so frustrating. I'm losing to guys I'm better than. But with this stupid cast on, it just feels impossible." Russ shrugged. "Well, who's responsible for breaking your hand in the first place?" "What?" Jason was stunned, but he knew Russ was right. "Jason, I want to tell you a story about impossible. A little 5-year-old boy named Garrett was once diagnosed with a brain tumor. The surgery to remove it saved his life, but left him temporarily paralyzed, deaf, and blind. He would have to learn every motor function over again. About 6 months later, his dad took him to see a blind athlete who competed in triathlons. Garrett was so inspired, he asked his mom to help him ride his bike when he got back home. Garrett had barely regained enough of his sight to see blurry objects, and he was able to walk, but very slowly. His mom reluctantly agreed. 1 year after surgery, Garrett was competing in his first triathlon on a tandem bicycle with his father. By the time he was 18 years old, he had completed a half marathon, a triathlon, and climbed Machu Picchu and become an Eagle Scout. Jason, always remember that when someone tells you something is impossible, what that really means is that it would take more sacrifice, grit, discipline, failure, and persistence than they are willing to give. One of my favorite guys who won an NBA championship said his dad always told him, life is about breaking through paper ceilings. Once you cut the ropes that keep you tied down, then you can start breaking through the paper ceilings above you. Life is full of paper ceilings. Things that are commonplace today were thought impossible a generation ago. 100 years ago, the idea that a human being could run a mile in under 4 minutes seemed impossible. But in 1954, a British medical student named Roger Bannister ran a mile in 3 minutes and 59.4 seconds. Just 46 days later, an Australian runner named John Landy beat his time. And within 3 years, over 20 athletes around the world had done the same. Why is that? Did the human race suddenly get all faster? No, they just realized the truth, that the 4-minute mile was a paper ceiling. Don't ever let paper ceilings stop you, Jason. Things that might seem impossible for most people will remain that way because they let paper ceilings stop them. But for someone with tenacious grit, impossible really is only a word. Our world has perpetually been driven forward by those people, the ones who believed the impossible was possible with grit, trust, and patience, and who are willing to take responsibility for what they have control over. All right, so a couple of things from that chapter. First, the impossible versus possible. People will tell you what's impossible. They will tell you something's impossible, and when they do, what it really means is that it would take more sacrifice, grit, discipline, and failure and persistence than they are willing to give. When someone tells you you can't do something, it means that they aren't confident that they can do it themselves, and they're projecting that onto you. So anytime you're up against a challenge, no matter what it is, whether it's school, whether it's relationships, whether it's a job challenge, whether it's on this basketball court, and you don't think you can do it, I'm telling you, you can. Right? You can push through that paper ceiling. We've cut the ropes from the last chapter, and we can break through that paper ceiling. So don't ever let anybody tell you that something's impossible. You have the ability to be able to do it. It just matters if you're going to try hard enough for long enough to actually get to that point. So what I'd encourage you to do is think about ways that you can, right? First of all, who says you can? And what is their expertise on this subject? Secondly, what is the thing that you can do to continuously push through to have more grit, persistence, effort consistently over the long term than what they were able to do? So break through the paper ceilings. All right, chapter 10, inches and nails. Inches and nails. Jason still found it hard to practice. After a long day knocking on doors, the last thing he felt like doing was going to the court to run footwork drills and finishing moves around the basket. When Russ asked him about it, he shrugged it off. It's getting hard. It's hard getting used to a different setup. At school, we have a whole gym and everything. Here, I just have a ball and the courts in the park. Isn't that all you had growing up? Jason felt himself flush with embarrassment. Well, yeah, but I don't really have any drills either. I'm used to running them with the team and having a coach tell us what to do. Now I just kind of try to shoot around, but I don't know how much good it's going to do. Russ nodded, looking at Jason for a long time. Then I think I might know someone who will be able to help you. The next day, Russ wasn't home at dinner, but Jan gave Jason a note with an address and a time on it, 8:30 p.m. tomorrow. When Jason asked what it was about, Jan only shrugged. You just said you needed to be there on time and ready to work out. Jason wondered what this meant. Russ was a street sweeper. Who could he possibly know that would be able to help him with basketball? But by dinner the next night, he'd forgotten about it. He had just started following Kaya on Instagram. And by the time he looked up from her feed, it was already 8:25 p.m. Crap! He grabbed his basketball and rushed out the door. When he arrived at the address, he was confused. It was an even worse basketball court than the one he usually went to. It looked ancient, like it hadn't been touched in a decade. A few flickering lights buzzed over the cracked pavement. The court was empty except for one person. He was a very tall man shooting free throws. Jason approached out of breath. Hi, I'm Jason. Sorry I'm late. The man turned and Jason's mouth dropped open. Standing in front of him was none other than TD, the same legendary man who just a few weeks ago had thrilled him with his pound the zone speech at the sales training. Jason, I'm TD. He shook Jason's hand, unblinking. Jason's mind sped as he stammered, so how do you know Russ? Russell? Oh, we're old friends. He's helped me with a few things. Jason nodded, still confused. TD gestured to the court. You're wondering why I'm here? When I first moved to this city, I worked out almost every night here. It was the only quiet court I could find. Plus, having too many resources can actually be detrimental at some time. That's the one reason why most people... That's one reason why most of the world's talent hotbeds never have the best resources or training facilities. Oh, cool. It didn't make much sense to Jason, but he wasn't about to argue. Look, Jason, Russell said you needed help on your game. I was looking forward to giving you that, but you got here at 8:36. But it's just a few minutes late, and you lost the opportunity to work out with me tonight. Life and basketball are determined by inches. Lots of small, seemingly insignificant things that added up and compounded over time will determine the trajectory of your life. Most people focus on all the big stuff, failing to realize that it is the little stuff that makes all the difference. Just ask Napoleon. The French emperor? Same one. If it weren't for one very important little thing, you and I might be speaking French right now instead of English. Do you want to know why? Because of nails. He chuckled at Jason's confusion. Napoleon's downfall was losing the Battle of Waterloo. But what most people don't realize is that he would have won it, except his men forgot to bring the headless nails to hammer into the British cannons to turn them into useless hunks of bronze. So instead, the British regained the cannons and defeated the French. In the big scheme of things, nails are just a little thing. But as I hope you are learning, the little things often determine the outcome. Don't worry, I won't leave you with nothing. Here. TD pulled out a neatly folded piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to Jason. This is the workout we were going to go through. When Jason looked up from the paper, TD was gone, vanishing like a ghost. Jason was rattled. He couldn't believe it. Inches? He respected TD, but he was sure that it was talent and money that determined the trajectory of people's life, not inches. And the workout? What a joke. It was just a bunch of basic drills Jason did as a kid playing at the YMCA. He was embarrassed even reading it. So as he walked off, he threw the paper in the trash. All right, lots there. Lots there. We're going to focus on two things. First of all, life is a game of inches. Basketball is a game of inches. The reason that we focus on things like chop wood, carry water, and pound the stone on our team, if you're either watching this as a part of my team or you're watching this as somebody who's not a part of the team or doesn't even play basketball, the reason we focus on that is because of the idea and the mindset that a lot of people doing a lot of small things over and over again the right way are what helps the community survive. And so I want you to think about that as you're coming into practice. It's the small things. We're going to do basic stuff. You already know that from some of the practices we've had. We do basic stuff, but we do basic stuff really well and we execute it really well because at game time speed, we're going to need to execute really well. It's not going to be a complicated play with 5 different movements and 5 different sessions. It's going to be simple things that executed right are going to get us the opportunities to be able to perform. And the little things matter considerably more than the big things. It's not talent, it's not money, it's desire and grit and all of the little things stacked up over and over and over again. All right, guys, we're going to do those chapters for this video. I'll record another couple and post them here in a second for chapters 11 and 12. But for right now, we'll end it. So thank you so much. If you enjoyed this, please watch the other videos. Let me know what you think. Shoot me a message. Find me on Instagram. Find me on X. Comment on the videos. And look forward to seeing you next time. Bye now.